All right. Well, good morning, everyone. I'll go ahead and get started and we'll do introductions throughout the presentation. But today we're just going to start talking about feeding the yams, using learning data behavior to support behavior-based outreach. So the yams is something that we picked up on the Kentucky Student Success Summit. Not sure if any of you all were able to attend, but we'll definitely hit on yams moving forward. But if you heard Dr. Cusio speak, yams are young adult mentors. So the focus of this session is really to focus on focusing on behavior and data and using those peer guides for outreach for behavior-based intervention. So Jenna, let's go ahead and go to the next slide. Well, first, we'll talk about the introduction and the agendas. So we have the welcome and introductions, the Pearson plus KCTCS partnership. Jenna's going to touch on from data to behavior, basically explaining the project that we've been working on with MAT 111 at Bluegrass Community and Technical College. And then we'll hear from Kasha Miller, Assistant Dean of Student Success Initiatives at Bluegrass Community and Technical College. And then we'll move on to Lily Massa-McKinley, the Executive Director for the Student Success Collaborative. And we'll finish up with some polling and some Q&A, as well as next steps for participation. So let's go ahead and jump into the actual presentation itself. So again, I'm Lauren Ellis. I'm the Executive Account Director. At Pearson, we do a lot of things. We're a learning company, we're a technology company, we're an education company. But more importantly, we're your partner, and your success is our success, especially when we're talking about using Pearson products in your courses. So at Pearson, as the slide indicates, we're taking a data-driven approach to learning outcomes. So we've seen some fantastic results that we are super excited to share as a result of that partnership between Bluegrass Community Technical College by using learner data to support behavior-based outreach. So the purpose of this session is really to inform you all of the project that we have going on with Contemporary Math at Bluegrass Community and Technical College, and extend that offer to all of the KCTCS campuses for Math 150 College Algebra. And we'll touch on that a little bit later, but let's go ahead and look at the complete view of learning so that we can understand the data that Pearson is providing to you all. So when a student interacts or engages with digitally delivered materials, there is a wealth of data that's captured by that interaction. You have the SIS data that's provided to the institution that's just capturing that basic student information. And then you have the LMS data. And that LMS data is really capturing just the student grades and the student activity, but it's not capturing that student learning. And at the heart of it, you'll see Pearson at the bottom. And Pearson is where you're really going to get that unique insight into learning. And it's where we're talking about getting that behavior to drive that peer-based outreach, right? So Pearson's MyLab and Mastering sees about 11 million users each year. So there's 11 million users accessing Pearson's MyLab and Mastering. MyLab Math specifically is one of the world's most widely used educational solution platforms. And we are very excited that in 2022, it was named as one of the best higher ed instructional math solutions for the CODI 2022 awards. And how this is all relevant to KCTCS is for fall 2021 and spring 2022, nearly 18,000 users crossed over into a course that used MyLab Math as the learning platform. So again, you've got the SIS data, the LMS data, and then the Pearson MyLab and Math data. And that is where we're getting that information from your student behavior to identify and reach out to those students. So as we engage with these materials and as students are engaging, we're getting all of that data, and we're also seeing factors that influence student success. So I think I saw at least one person that said they attended the Kentucky Student Success Summit. And if you were at the summit, you heard from the student success panel or the student panel. And that panel talked about a lot of different factors that influence their student success, right? So we heard from a Student Government Association president from Northern Kentucky University who talked about a mental health crisis that she went through in February 21. We heard from other students at KCTCS that talked about communities and food pantries and food insecurities and needing shelter and just basic student needs. And one of them said, we need everyone to understand that school isn't our number one priority. It isn't always our number one priority, right? There are other factors that are playing into what's going on with student success. And these external factors are the ones that we're talking about today. So these external factors are the ones that they're a little bit difficult for faculty to see, right? You can't see, you can see if a student's getting a D or an F in a course, but you can't see if a student is going through a mental health crisis. You can't see if a student is struggling with getting enough food on their tables. You can't see that information. So what we're hoping to do is provide that behavior to really shine a light on those external factors. So in 2019, we began the conversations with Kasha Miller, the Assistant Dean of Student Success Initiatives at Bluegrass Community and Technical College. And we essentially just told her about our data-driven approach to helping with student success. Kasha recommended we reach out to Dr. Capo and Dr. Feeney. And in 2020, before the world shut down, that was our last presentation at Bluegrass Community and Technical College. So we were able to present to them, get their basically their sign off for the project, and fast forward to 2021. And this is where Jenna Olson, our senior data scientist, comes in to talk a little bit about Contemporary Math 111 at Bluegrass Community and Technical College. And she'll talk about how we're getting from the behaviors to the peer outreach so that we can proactively reach students before the behaviors become outcomes. So Jenna, I'll pass it off to you.
Thank you, Lauren. So as Lauren mentioned, my name is Jenna Olson. I am a senior data scientist at Pearson. And I've been working with Lauren and Kasha since I joined Pearson a little over a year ago. And one of the things that we've been focusing on is going from performance data, so stepping down from the midterm or final grades, which have been visible to all of you historically, to performance on sections of the course, and then a step further down to be able to pick up on those behaviors that might give us insight into other things that are going on in the students' lives. So talking about personal habits and behaviors, student learning behavior has been shown to be a better predictor for success than demographics. As I'm sure all of you know, things like income and first generation status and minority status are fairly good predictors of student success in higher education in general. But if we can get as early as 10 days into the term and see the kind of behaviors that students are showing, how they're interacting with the courseware, then that becomes a better predictor than everything we knew about the students on day one. Some of the behaviors that we've been looking at include starting assignments or projects early so that they're giving themselves enough time to work through it, get help, spacing out their practice. So distributing their study across several days instead of cramming all right before the assignment is due. We've looked at different measures for struggle, like students that are putting in a really high effort and still getting poor results, or even students that are getting okay results, but it's taking a lot more effort than we would expect. And then the last one that we'll be mainly focusing on today is giving up or re-engagement, where we're looking at how students recover from bad days. This is really similar to the ideas behind grit or growth mindset that I'm sure you're all familiar with. But the basic idea is that we want to see how students are coming back after something's been just a really bad day for them. Oh, now that once we have an idea of a behavior we're looking at, we start with the data that are available. In this case, what we're looking at in terms of data is a record for each action the student is taking, whether that's checking an answer, stepping through a guided solution that walks them through how to solve the problem, or submitting an assignment. And then we define the behavior in terms of those available data. So in this case, we say if a student is working on a problem, they're checking their answer, they're getting hints, but doesn't solve it during that homework session, then we say they've given up on the problem. And then at the session level, we can get a giving up percentage by taking the number of problems where a student has given up and dividing it by the number of problems the students worked on. As I mentioned before, the idea with this is re-engagement. So a single bad session doesn't mean much. If we look at historic data, something like 95% of students have at least one session where they give up on everything. And as you all know, I'm sure, the fail rates for any of the math courses are not that high. So when we see a student giving up on everything, that doesn't mean that the course is sunk. But what we do care about is the trend, because if we see what we see in the student trends can indicate a hurdle that they're trying to get over. So when we talk about re-engagement, a positive re-engagement is where the giving up percentage gets smaller in future sessions. They're sticking with it a little bit more. They're solving more of the problems that they're working on. A negative re-engagement is where that giving up percentage gets larger in future sessions. So it's a little bit like a snowball effect, where a bad session leads to a worse session, leads to worse again. And that snowball effect is what we want to really watch out for. This is an example of looking at that trend across a bunch of sessions. This is a particular student. And when we talk about a re-engagement trend, we're looking for at least 3 sessions because 2 is a little too small. And if we look for a 3-session trend, this red circle is where we would say, okay, the trend is really negative in terms of like they're giving up more and more each time. And this is where we would raise a flag or an alert and say, it looks like this student is in trouble. For this particular student, that flag could have been raised late February. They ended up dropping the course in April. So we had almost a full month of warning from when this behavior indicated that there was a problem until it became, like Lauren mentioned, an outcome that we couldn't easily get the students back from. So looking at the data and defining it, the next step was to do things like this and look at historic performance and see if this particular behavior that we defined made any difference in either individual student or course level success. We also looked at overall trends to see if we look at success rate, where we have successful students and then students who end the course with a DF or W. And we look at this trend, we can see that students who are successful, both overall and for some of these specific categories, are coming back or re-engaging a little bit better. It can be pretty small, like 0.66%. That's 1 out of, that's maybe 1 or 2 problems that they stuck with instead of giving up on. But having even that small positive trend is correlated with the difference between succeeding and failing in the course. So this gave us enough data to say, okay, there's a difference here. It's a difference between passing and failing. There's some early warnings that we think we can pick up on. And so looking at all of this, working with Kasia at Bluegrass, we set up a plan for how we could measure this with live data during the fall 2021 term and see if we could intervene and make an impact in what students were doing. So, Kasia, I will turn it over to you.
Oh, hello. All right, so a couple things to clarify. Part of the reason the course was chosen was because it was the one course that didn't go through a major course redesign between the prior spring and fall of 2021, because we had been using Pearson's data analytics the prior year to actually analyze where our students were struggling. So we redid our courses, and this was the one course that hadn't completed its redesign process. So choosing contemporary math, which across the system is different numbers, was more circumstantial than anything. So just kind of clarify that. But I don't know how to make this thing move. Yeah, here we go. All right, so in general, just some of the things that we looked at. Jenna noticed this behavior, was like, okay, is this something that we can use to help intervene earlier before students actually have a chance to have a bad performance, right? So she generated from her end weekly reports that had all kinds of information. This is just a sample of some of the information. So we knew what subject, what section they were in, and we had some other data, but we also had what their last exam grade was, the last assessment or assignment they handed in, what their last login date was, how many sessions, so how many active times they had actually engaged in the homework assignments this term, when the last session ended. And then our newest, which is where we were really focusing, was that problem abandonment trend. So over the course of 3 sessions, what was the percentage of problems that were being abandoned? And we used 50% as our cutoff just because there was no prior data on any other indicator. You got to start somewhere. So what I would do is I would take her reports and then I would go through the different, maybe 3 key points and highlight what piece we wanted to have outreach for, and we wanted to intervene with the student. So for the problem abandonment trend, if it was over 50%, then they got flagged. We wanted to have some kind of communication with them. We also did use last assessment handed in, because if it was so far behind, then that's trouble for the student. It's too far behind. And then current exam, we also took this opportunity to give kudos, and I think that's very important, that the communications they receive from our peer guides isn't all, oh, I'm checking in, you may be struggling, but it's also, I hear you did great on that exam. Congratulations. I'm glad things are going well. So kudos are very important as well. So we took the opportunity to build those into our process as well. So we prioritized what flags we were looking at, based on that problem abandonment trend, when the last session ended, because that let us know if they were remaining active. If it had been over a week since they last interacted with the program, they got flagged. When their last assessment was handed in, or what that assessment was, if it was way behind where they should be, where the rest of their class members were in the section, they got flagged. And then again, high exam grades after an exam, just an opportunity for kudos. Right, so our messaging, it was very important when Jenna and I first started thinking about how we wanted to do this process. It was very, very important that we wanted the voice of the communication to come from a peer. Students are already hearing from their faculty members. They're already hearing from Starfish, which is our early alert retention program with their flags and stuff. They're already hearing from that. We wanted them to hear from a peer, from another student, and that voice was very important to us. Also within the messaging, it was very important that we didn't come across as Big Brother. Okay, this isn't about Big Brother. Our peer guides were really just being given, this is the flag and this is the message we want you to send. So they didn't have all the background data about the students in the courses, but it was, hey, I just wanted to check in. I'm checking in with all students. Is everything going okay? Do you need any assistance? Are you aware of the embedded tutor? Here's their bookings link, because we use bookings for registering appointments with our tutors. Here's their bookings link. Or depending on the message, you might want to reach out to your instructor at this point. Maybe they can help you improve your performance or tell you what you need to focus on. Here's some best student practices. Did you know that if you engage in a course at least 3 times a week, you have this much greater likelihood of success? If they got into a situation where they were actually talking to the students, because some did reply and started conversations, then obviously we have that student experience that they can share with the other student. Yes, I've struggled in that course too, and these are some of the things I did. And then again, kudos. Just, I hear you did great. Just sometimes that's just what we need to hear if we're struggling with the course or not struggling with the course, just to help keep us going. As far as the outreach, we did use different modalities for communication with students. We used phone calls. We used text messaging through Google Voice, because that worked for our peer guides. And then we had standard email. And there's 2 main models for determining what modality you use. The first one is based on priority, where if you have multiple indicators of the ones we're looking at, then that might warrant the phone call. But if they just have 1 or 2 indicators, if they're important enough, that might warrant a text. And if it's just a, hey, I want to let you know what resources we have, and here's some best practices, that's easier done via email. The other model, it depends on how many times you've had to outreach to the student. So the first outreach, you could do email and see if that is sufficient. And then if they're on the report again, if they're being flagged the second week, then we go, okay, we need to upgrade this communication and make it a text message. And then if they're still on the 3rd week, then okay, we're calling you now. And then by the 4th occurrence, we've got to refer to the instructor. So we would give the instructor a list of the students that say, look, we know there's problems going on. We can't get a hold of them. We just want you to know we've tried, and maybe you will have better luck. So a couple different models you can work from on how you do your communications and how you prioritize your modalities. Some outcomes from fall 2021. So as Jenna already stated, it gave us an opportunity to statistically verify that problem abandonment trend was a meaningfully different and statistically significant predictor of course success, which is fantastic. So what we had, and these success rates are low. I know they're so low. This is a struggle course. That's why we're doing outreach in it. But from fall 2020 to fall 2021, we actually increased our success rates back to pre-COVID numbers, which was actually 2019. So these numbers that you're seeing are actually higher than they were pre-COVID, because we all know fall 2020, everything took a hit. Everything took a hit. Lovely pandemic. But we did see a significant positive impact on student success, and we got back to pre-COVID numbers, which was fantastic for us, because at least it put us back on a level playing field. This is part of Jenna's results, which was a student behavior change after outreach, which was important to us, that even if a student received outreach but didn't respond or reply to the peer guide, we still saw a positive trend in their recovery. So just receiving outreach, even without the back and forth engagement, had a positive impact on our student success. For our first generation students, we saw their giving up percentage go down by 6%. African-American students, 7.83%, Pell eligible. These are key populations. And if we can help nudge them in the positive direction, just simply by doing outreach based on behaviors and giving them access to the resources and reminding them that these resources are available to help assist them, whether it's counseling or tutoring, both directions, it's having a positive impact on their performance and their learning. I wanted to go ahead and throw this in. This isn't a project. I mean, this is a project. It's not something that can just be started and haphazardly continued. So what worked well for us was the fact that we did have embedded tutoring. Now, in the course we're talking about for fall of 2021, we actually only had one virtual embedded tutor who was responsible for all of our sections. So we referred everybody to this one tutor. This semester, we expanded the project to include 150, and we have embedded tutors in each of our classes. And so the peer guide would actually refer to the specific embedded tutor for their section and do the connection that way. It definitely takes a project lead. It really, really, really helps if there's consistency among the faculty on how they're teaching the course, their calendars for the course. That way it makes it a lot easier to determine when you see that last assignment, when students falling behind. And then we used a team site, Microsoft Team site, and that worked out beautifully. We could have weekly meetings with our peer guides, and we would discuss the data, discuss the messaging for this week. We would discuss what their experiences were last week with communicating with the students. It would let us know if we needed to follow up, because sometimes there was a situation that the peer guide was not able to address and it needed additional follow-up. So it was just allowed us to keep all our documents together and have a regular meeting space. Project lead qualifications. I think a faculty member is probably best, but not required. Understanding and experience with the course is helpful as well, not required, but because I was intimately involved with the course, I could anticipate where the struggle points were going to be. And I let the peer guides know that, hey, next week they're starting this chapter. And if we can help get them connected with that tutor beforehand, that's really going to help them. So having some experience with the course, I think, is helpful. Required knowledge about student success resources. We had to make sure our peer guides had access to everything. I mean, easy links that could be emailed or text or phone numbers. You need a good working relationship with the teaching faculty, because if you don't have the experience with the course, you can use their insight to help you determine when your struggle points are going to occur for your students and when you really need to be paying attention to different messaging. We used lots of data reports, PeopleSoft queries, DSS, Starfish, if you're part of the KCTCS system. So having access to those data reports is helpful. And then Excel, because everything's done in Excel. So, got to have Excel. And then here's just a small description of the responsibilities for that project lead. It's basically everything we've already talked about. It's just I was the person that identified the students and identified the message to be sent, so that our peer guides weren't actually looking at the data. I was analyzing the data. That was my role, and then directing them to, these are the students we want you to contact. This is the type of messaging. They developed a lot of the messaging themselves, and that was beautiful. That was actually the point, because they would take what I said needed to be said, and then they would phrase it in the student language. And that helped out tremendously. So I gave them the goals, and then they converted it into something usable, friendly, because Jen and I both sometimes would go, yeah, that's our teacher voice talking. So we need you to translate this into a student voice. So we were very thankful for the peer guides. It's important. All right. Thank you very much. We're going to pass it on to Lily.
And Kasha, thank you. I did see a question in the chat about how was success in the course defined?
Success is always defined as an A, B, or C. As a student earning an A, B, or C. We're pretty consistent about that, at least at BCTC across the board. And I think that's how it's typically defined, but that's how we were defining it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Well, hello, everybody. I'm Lily Massa-McKinley. I'm the Executive Director of the Kentucky Student Success Collaborative, and I'm very excited to kind of just be a part of this project, in the sense that the collaborative is really excited whenever we can lift up great practices, proven and promising emerging practices happening here in Kentucky, and share that success with other partners and bring everyone together to kind of learn from one another. So BCTC, thank you for forging this path with Pearson and really figuring out how we can all maximize this tool that KCTCS already uses in so many ways. I am seeing the chat. There's another question related to, were all the classes face-to-face or were they hybrid or online?
Actually, the majority were online.
Okay.
We focused on online courses because those were the ones that were struggling the most and typically have the lower success rates anyway. And then in fall of 2020, we had so few on-campus classes. So no, we've been focusing mostly on online and remote courses because that's where we see the most significant decline in success rates, just because those students need that extra re-engagement and the instructor isn't able to see them on a daily basis in the classroom to help identify those marks. So we felt that was where the greatest need was. So that's where we focused.
Thank you, Kasha. So just as far as how the collaborative sees our role, or our even just what we might be able to bring to the table, is helping convene a community of practice, or helping convene the participating faculty instructors together, probably at the beginning of a semester, midway through, and then as we wrap up and conclude a semester, to think about what we've learned through this intervention and this kind of real-time data analytics, what we've learned through connecting with our peer guides and leveraging our embedded tutors or tutors for these courses, and what opportunities for improvement do we see as a collective. That way we can continue to improve the intervention and the data analytics for, increased success of our students. So the collaborative will really just be following the lead of campus partners and Pearson and really driving the intervention and the analytics. But the collaborative is happy to kind of host some of those conversations as we go through to make sure that we are all kind of gaining from each other's experience and insights. So I'm just going to share a little bit about the overall project expectations. And this is really a partnership between Pearson and any campuses that would like to participate. And so right now it's really focused in on KCTCS because I think that's where the strongest kind of user contracts are and where faculty are already engaged with Pearson. It's a focus on college algebra this coming academic year, and it is looking at both, looking for participation both in the fall and the spring from campus partners. There's a few pieces to this puzzle that campuses will just want to consider and discuss among your teams, that we would like to invite all faculty teaching your Math 150 or your college algebra courses to participate. Not everybody gets the email or reads the email or just knows that these things are happening. So we really hope that if a campus is interested in participating, that you will share this invitation with all faculty who may be teaching the course. We also, it's just a best practice kind of seeing the work that Kasha went through as the project coordinator. So it is definitely a best practice to identify a single point of contact as a project coordinator for this coming year. And there will certainly be a time investment from that individual. But I think that it's really exciting to invest your time in something that is proven successful. So it's totally worth it. There will be a training or kind of an orientation for these project coordinators as we get closer to the launch of the fall semester so that everybody feels like they know what they're getting into. Data requests from campuses is just to provide that census enrollment, your midterm and your end of term enrollment, and then those grades or whatever the data are that Pearson is looking for so that they can really gather really identify the success. And breaking that down by student demographics is also really important so that we can see how we're closing equity gaps or where we need to maybe intensify or adjust interventions. As I mentioned, we will be inviting all faculty who are participating to join us for 3 one-hour conversations during the fall and then 3 again in the spring. And we'll look at the formative success data. So we'll actually be able to see how it's going across all of the sections that are participating. We'll be able to see like, wow, this particular section is like hitting it out of the park. And what can we learn from what's going on inside that particular classroom? We'll also be able to discuss like shared challenges or interesting cases and how we might have worked through those with our peer guides or faculty intervention. And then finally, identifying kind of who are these YAMs or these, peer mentors who might just do the outreach and then connect a student with a tutor, or connect them with other resources that are available on campus. It's not always academic barriers that lead a student to abandon a problem. It could be a health issue or some other personal issue that's going on in their lives. And so peer mentors or peer guides can be really essential in that work. And, there's a lot of creativity with how campuses who may not already have a program in place for that kind of position can grow it, or can leverage other student employees to kind of serve in that role. Especially as we're just kind of getting this off the ground with a year 2 expanded pilot. But, this is certainly something where if we have strong enough data after this next project year, looking to scale and certainly share best practices with others. And there will be a peer guide training that takes place in August as well. And from Pearson, Pearson is such a great partner and they have a lot to offer. So they'll be the ones leading the training for campus coordinators. They'll be leading the training for peer mentors and tutors. They'll be sharing those weekly student engagement reports with the point of contact with the faculty members, in order to identify, really make it easy for campuses to identify those students that would benefit from outreach. And then we'll also be inviting them to join these faculty community of practice meetings so that they can continue to learn as well. So I do have, would love for your all's thoughts and engagement, et cetera, as we get forward. I'm going to launch a poll here. And if you don't mind just responding from your campus perspective, that would be great. There's 4 questions. Does everybody see the poll?
Yes.
Okay, good. I've not done this before, so it's like the magic of
Good,
Zoom.
Lily.
Well, please continue to keep responding to the poll if you haven't done so yet. And very interested to hear anyone's specific questions that they have related to the project itself, responsibilities, expectations, time commitment, any anticipated barriers that you see to your campus or your courses being able to participate. So I'm gonna let's just open it up, and please feel free to either raise your hand or ask questions. Shauna. Thank you.
2 questions. I was wondering if the slides would be available. I can share them with our math curriculum committee. There may be some colleges who were unable to attend or be represented today, to see if there's any additional interest.
Yes, we'll definitely share this meeting recording. So the presentation and all that good information will be able to be shared along with the deck.
So I guess that was my only question. Thank you.
I think we also have a 1-pager available that we put together that can go out with the deck and the recording. So
Thanks, Jenna.
Any other questions about the data, the behaviors, the data that we're getting? I guess in terms of from a KCTCS system perspective, just to let everyone on this call know, the majority of faculty are already using Pearson. And from the ground level, I've been working with the local representative, Beth Hobbs, and having these discussions already with faculty. So there's a lot of excitement already around this project. So some of your faculty may already know about it. But just to reiterate, nearly every campus at KCTCS is already using Pearson for Math 150 for college algebra, with the exception of Hazard and Maysville. In Maysville, we've met with already just to discuss the project, and Hazard as well. So I just wanted to give you that background so you don't have to do any work on your end in terms of, are you using Pearson? Are you not using Pearson? We already know on our end that they're using Pearson. So I just wanted to point that out.
And when I receive the recording and the information, I can share that with each of our colleges are represented on our math curriculum committee, and I can get all of this information into their hands.
That would be awesome. Thank you, Shauna. Any other questions or comments or need any clarification on the process or commitments?
Okay, you want to go to the next slide?
Anything in chat? Yep.
Okay. So just the next steps, like this was just an information session to give folks enough information that you can go back to maybe your campus teams, talk it over with your colleagues and think through, is this something that we would like to participate in this coming year? And so we have time. And so like I said, we'll be sharing out the presentation recording, the meeting recording, the PowerPoint, the one pager that Jenna referenced with all the data, as well as a link to a commitment form, which we're just asking for one form to be completed per campus that's interested in. And this is, this is a commitment form, but it's also really an interest form so that Pearson can make sure that they're providing more of that one-on-one outreach to talk through any questions that your faculty may have. And then I think that the kind of deadline to really know which faculty want to participate related and with their their relative sections would be around August 1st. So we have time here, and I see Joe with a question. Oh, is that per campus or per college? So I was thinking like for Southeast, there would be one commitment form for Southeast, and then all of your faculty on all 5 of your campuses that teach Math 150. Is that right, Lauren? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, that's correct.
Yeah. Yep. So there is certainly some communications that we hope that y'all will take back to your campuses, and that Shauna can also help by sharing out with the broader curriculum committee. And feel free. Is my audio going in and out? I'm so sorry. I'll pause and let Jenna kind of just wrap us up.
No, Lily, I'm just checking. It might have been me. I've got this new laptop that's given me some audio issues. I was just trying to figure out if it's me or you.
I'm sure you're not the only one. I see Joe mentioned that it was a little bit too. And then Donna asked about the anticipated time commitment.
Good to know. Thanks.
Kasha, do you think you could respond to the question from Donna?
I would say for just the coordinator, the project lead, probably 3 to 4 hours a week is about what I averaged. And that was going through the data reports and then looking at the students, comparing with where their peers were in the course progress. So 4 hours a week. We had an at least 1 hour, well, not even an hour, or usually a 30-minute check-in meeting with Jenna every week and with the peer guides. So it's not huge. It needs to be done. I mean, it's definitely working with the data, but I would say probably an average of 3 to 4 hours a week.
And one of the things we are doing as we're getting close to the end of this term is Kasha and I and our peer guides are getting together to update and kind of streamline the reports and the scripts that the peer guides have put together to put, like Kasha mentioned, our teacher speak into student language. So we are working to kind of capture that and use that to improve reports. So Kasha's work over the last year is giving, a coordinator at each campus kind of a leg up already. because we've been doing this for a year and we can capture how we've done it and what has been the most effective.
It also will depend on how involved, if you use multiple factors for your communication versus just the trend, and how consistent your faculty are with their course calendars and their timing. If the majority of faculty are covering the same topics in the same weeks and their tests are within the same week, then it's not difficult at all, because you can very easily keep up with which students are falling behind, which ones aren't. If they're really diverse, it takes a little bit more digging. So a lot of that is campus and faculty specific as to the ease of getting consistent reporting. And that's not the reporting from Pearson. It's how we use that data to tailor the messages and tag the appropriate people each week for that outreach.
Thank you.
I'm going to go ahead and turn off the slideshow because that kills a lot of my ability to see the screen. Lily, as we're putting together these, I want to call them artifacts to send out to everybody, the recording, the slide deck, let's include the commitment form there as well. And I'd love it if we could include mine and Lauren's email addresses. So if anybody that's here or that's listening to the recording later has questions about the process or who's using the courseware or anything like that from the Pearson side, I can speak for me. I'm sort of speaking for Lauren, but she can correct me. We'd be happy to answer those questions. If you want to just email us, we can give more detail or reiterate anything that would be helpful.
Likewise for me, you can include my email address. I have no problem talking with faculty about this project. We were very excited to do it. So it was good information.
All right. Well, I will make sure I get that email out by end of day tomorrow, everybody. If there's no more questions, then we've gotten about 10 minutes back. All right.
Thank you all so much for your time and your participation. Like Jenna said, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out and we will send out the information after this recording. So talk to you all soon and thank you very much.